Good afternoon, Padawans. I hope for the off-worlders you have had time to adjust to the gravity, light cycles, and atmosphere, as well as dealing without a connection to the Force. I know that's very difficult for many. For those of this planet, I trust you viewed the Galactic Archive references required for your other classes regarding the Skywalker family. I, however, do not recommend watching the reenactment of the rise of Anakin Skywalker. I find it to have been very badly done. Today we will discuss how biases affect us by how we categorize them. Force users take advantage of each of these and use others' minds against them if the person is unaware. The first bias is memory bias. Many people wrongly believe that memory is very accurate and plays back like a hologram file. That is not the case at all. Memory is changed anytime you remember it, and you update it with new information before it goes back into storage. It also has tags and triggers tied to it for better access, which is why a smell or a song can trigger a very old memory. Research shows that memories are so unreliable they can barely be used in court anymore, and bad memories and false memories have led to millions of innocents sentenced for crimes they did not commit on this planet. The Galactic Senate had rules limiting the use of memory in court for centuries until the Empire rose using fear, prejudice, and code words like common sense to allow all personal memory to be admissible in court and reasons to charge people for crimes they did not commit. Memory is not solid, it is not what happens, it is a representation of what happened, and is changing with new experiences and information. The second bias is called an emotional bias. This is a bias that you have because of emotional ties. You are more likely to believe someone you know, especially if they are usually truthful to you in other ways, as opposed to a stranger, even if they have authority on the actual topic at hand. You are less likely to fact-check a person you know. They're probably not lying to you, just wrong, mostly because of either a faulty memory bias or they learned it from another bad source that they also trusted. Your grandmother isn't lying to you about that new alternative treatment method or political position she heard about, just misled. You are often less likely to correctly check an idea because you came up with it as well, as opposed to someone else's. Control over your emotions is essential to being a Jedi. Certainty bias is where your level of certainty on a topic is much too high initially to change with new facts, which can prevent you from attaining the real truth. You must not be 100% certain of anything. You must always leave that little bit of an opening if you're wrong. But the change requires sufficient evidence. Sadly, lacking certainty makes many people feel uncomfortable, which leads to our next bias, comfort bias. This bias exists because things like uncertainty have too many variables and other questions make us feel uncomfortable, and we will jump on the explanation or idea that stops that mental discomfort without checking to see if it's true. Many times, we don't want to check it, or the feeling of comfort creates an emotional bias that feels so good, right, and natural that produces the certainty bias of course, it's just common sense and obvious to believe it. Comfort is truly for the weak-minded, and they are prime candidates for manipulation by a Force user, and we must be okay with dealing with uncomfortable truths and ideas. Perception bias is one where your senses, mind, or even experiences can deceive you. An example of this is the parochial effect, where you assume that what you experience is the same everywhere and true for everyone. Also, over-trusting your own senses in cases when you really cannot process something you saw, such as an optical illusion. Your perception can deceive you. Don't trust them, unless you have no other method of testing reality at that particular time, when you must make a decision. It is why Jedi hold truths from certain points of view. Lastly, we have basic instinctual bias. Prejudice is an example of this instinctual bias, where one's mind views someone differently from you initially as a threat, but knowing it makes this bias easier to overcome. Another is the human natural inability to instinctively grasp and estimate probabilities. It's why so many are tricked into gambling when they feel as if they have a higher chance of winning than they actually do. All 5 of these bias groups impact us differently, depending on if we are alone or in a social setting. Reading or holograms can trigger different biases, while social interactions can compound even more combinations of biases, as one may make incorrect judgment calls about the correctness of a statement made based on physical appearance, mannerisms, or vocal traits that affect perceived expertise or intelligence of the person. Remember, biases are shortcuts to decrease the need for brain size. Shortcuts normally work during your formative years to help you survive, but they often plague you in the rest of your life in bad decision-making, even if you're unaware of the bias. Non-judgmental awareness of your own bias can increase your chances of making the right choice. That concludes our lesson for today. For those of this planet, I want to remind you of the tests on the major species, their locations in the galaxy, and what they are best known for. This will be essential when you finally go off-world. It's a large universe out there, and you must be prepared for peoples you will find very strange to be a proper Jedi. Until next class, good luck in your training, and may the Force be with us.
Like, rate, share, and subscribe you will. Donate to Patreon you must. Do or do not. There is no try.